8 minutes past the hour, and we're happy to have you along with us here on the Sunrise Morning Show on Sacred Heart Catholic Radio. Max Prowant is with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show. He's Research Fellow for In Defense of Christians. Max, welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning.
It's good to have you. I'm doing great and happy to be talking to you. First off, you are hosting a panel to discuss the Christian genocide that has been ongoing in Nigeria. First of all, just give us the details of that.
Of the panel or of the genocide?
Of the panel. Then we'll get to trust me, we'll get to the genocide.
Okay, so tomorrow at noon in Washington, D.C., In Defense of Christians is hosting a panel to talk about Christian persecution in Nigeria. It will be live streamed on the YouTube page as well as on Facebook. And we brought together, we have 5 individuals right now. So former Congressman Frank Wolf, who helped get passed the International Religious Freedom Act in 1998. Current Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is co-chair of the Nigerian Congressional Caucus. We have the president of Genocide Watch, Greg Stanton, Leila Gilbert of the Hudson Institute, and also Steve Minata, president and co-founder of ICON, the International Committee on Nigeria. And we thought that each one of these people could offer a sort of unique perspective on what is going on in Nigeria, what can we in the United States, but also in the international community do to end Christian persecution and to try to manage the threat of radical jihad. That's the sort of bare bones, big picture of what the panel is going to look like. Gregory Stanton, for example, will be talking about, is this actually a genocide? Does this meet the sort of legal qualifications such that we can actually call it a genocide? And, hot take, he says, yes, of course we can.
Yeah.
But,
we've had representatives from IDC on the show any number of times over the past few years, specifically describing this as a genocide, calling a spade a spade. Why should we also call it a jihad? Yeah,
and calling it a jihad is important because that way you recognize precisely who the sort of antagonist is. But in this case, it is radicalized Islamist militants who call themselves jihadists and view what they're doing as a sort of religious war, as a jihad. And it's important to recognize that way you understand the character of these people, right? So right now there's a lot of debate going on. Is the violence that we see in Nigeria since, for the past 20 years or so, specifically, is that because of there's been the introduction of some sort of severe religious ideology, Salafi jihadism, or is it because of a number of other sort of material factors on the ground? For example, Nigeria's economy, despite being the largest in Africa, is struggling. In the case of the Fulani herdsmen that we see in the Mid-Belt region, right, the current sort of narrative is that because of climate change, these individuals have been pushed out of the Lake Chad area, and now they're fighting for grazing land. So that would be a very different reason to persecute Christians than it would be because you are sort of a radicalized Islamist. But the reason in this case you can say they certainly are jihadists because they target Christians in particular. Right? Often if groups of individuals are kidnapped, the people who convert to Islam are released, whereas Christians are continue to be held captive. In the Fulani, I think it was just a couple months ago, Providence Magazine reported that a Fulani Muslim had converted to Christianity and then was subsequently murdered by his fellow tribesmen. So calling them jihadists recognizes that there is a severe religious motivation behind the attackers right now, that this is not simply an intercommunal conflict, this is not simply an economic conflict, but one that has a pretty large religious dimension.
Yeah, and you can see that in, I guess you could call it a shift, maybe, in terms of where and how these attacks against Christians have been happening. Can you talk about that?
A shift in how they've been happening?
In where they've been happening.
Yeah, for sure. So, since maybe you could say around 2009, there has been this Islamist insurgency with Boko Haram, right? And Boko Haram, and then later the Islamic State West African province, ISWAP, were largely confined to the north and the northeast, especially in the Borno province, where there's almost no presence of the Nigerian government, right? It's very far removed from the main currents of Nigerian society. But gradually you see, especially beginning in the mid-2010s, that attacks against Christians and just generally jihadist-inspired terrorist attacks are happening more in the Mid-Belt region, and then lately even in the southeast. So, yeah, and part of that is because of the sort of emergence of the Fulani as a more religiously charged group, because the Fulani are not confined to the Borno province or to the northeast, but are spread across Nigeria. And if they become more radicalized by this sort of jihadist ideology, well, they have more options and you could say more personnel to launch operations against not just Christians, but the litany of individuals that radical jihadists take umbrage with.
Well, it seems kind of strange that this has not been taken under control by the government. It doesn't appear that the government does a whole lot to try to prevent or control these things from happening. So that leads me to this question. So the State Department every year comes out with a list of countries of particular concern when it comes to violations of religious freedom. Nigeria was actually removed from that list last year by the State Department. Do you know why that is?
No one knows. No one knows why that is, and no one's really getting a clear answer from folks at the State Department. The best we can offer is some speculation. Right? So the embassy in Abuja in Nigeria is the one that's really pressing that climate change narrative I had mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And once you say something like, oh, it's climate change, it's just like, it's a little conflict, don't worry about it, we can manage it, it'll go away. That sounds a lot better than saying, oh, Nigeria is a country of particular concern, we need to start possibly doing some economic sanctions, or saying that this is a genocide. Right? Because as soon as you say either one of those, then Nigeria is going to become, people are going to pay more attention to it. Mm-hmm. And it's going to force the United States to take some action to help end the conflict there. Mm-hmm. Whereas if it's primarily an intercommunal conflict, well, these things happen all the time, let it go, people will calm down, but let's not make a fuss about it. But that's precisely why it's important that we get the terms right when we're talking about the conflict there.
Yeah, which is what your panel is going to be doing. Remind us again of how folks can view this panel discussion on the Nigerian genocide of Christians. It's taking place tomorrow at noon, correct?
Tomorrow at noon. You can look at it on the IDC Facebook page and also on our YouTube page.
And you can
find also
Go ahead.
I was going to say, just real quick, I'd like to shout out and thank the Philos Project for supporting this panel as well, and the Institute for Religion and Democracy, whose office space we will be using.
Absolutely. Well, you can find In Defense of Christians linked at sunrisemorningshow.com so that you can go and check out this panel discussion. Max Prowant, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Amy.
You too. Thank you.